Imagine this, a tiny, helpless 2-year-old boy, his whole life ahead of him, brutally beaten in his own home. And the man responsible, the one person who should have loved him most, his father. This is the horrifying case of Daniel Hardcastle and the murder of his son, Damien Russell. In August 2023, emergency services were called to a modest flat on Central Drive in Blackpool. Inside, they found little Damien, barely 2 years old, clinging to life. His injuries were catastrophic. He was rushed to the hospital, but the medical staff quickly realized the severity. This was not an accident. This was abuse, and not just once but over time. Doctors and paramedics noted bruising across his entire body, ribs fractured, a deep bite mark on his thigh, internal injuries that no toddler could have inflicted on himself. And yet, when questioned, his father, Daniel Hardcastle, offered a chillingly simple explanation. He fell. He hit his head on the coffee table. But those words didn't match the reality in front of them. During the post-mortem examination, a pathologist painted a horrifying picture. The fatal injury was a severe trauma to Damien's head, likely caused by forceful shaking and then either striking his head against a solid surface or by slamming him directly into one. The violence was so extreme, it caused not only head trauma, but significant injuries to his neck and eyes. These were not the marks of a fall. These were the marks of sustained, brutal assault. And yet, in court, Hardcastle showed no remorse, no tears, no visible grief for the son he had killed. At Preston Crown Court, the jury listened to weeks of testimony. Doctors, forensic experts, police officers, all of them describing the horrific injuries Damien suffered. The evidence was overwhelming. They heard how, in the days and weeks leading up to the murder, Hardcastle had withdrawn from his friends and family. He drank heavily. He spent long nights online, chatting with a woman he had just met. Meanwhile, his young son was left in his sole care, completely vulnerable. On the night before the final assault, Hardcastle didn't sleep. He stayed up all night. And the next day, he unleashed a fury on his helpless child that would ultimately take Damien's life. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours. 2 hours was all it took for them to agree, unanimously, guilty of murder. For Damien's family, sitting in that courtroom, the verdict brought both relief and unimaginable grief. They had lost a son, a nephew, a grandson. Nothing would ever bring him back. But at least, justice, some form of it, was finally delivered. The judge handed down the sentence, life in prison, with a minimum term of 22 years before parole could even be considered. Detective Superintendent Al Davies of Lancashire Police summed it up with haunting words. Damien's murder was an unspeakably vile and heinous act committed by the very man Damien should have been able to rely upon to love and protect him, his own father. And yet, throughout the entire process, Daniel Hardcastle remained stone-faced. No apology, no tears, no emotion at all. What makes this case so horrifying is not just the brutality of the act, but the betrayal. Children rely entirely on their parents for love, safety, and care. For Damien, that trust was shattered in the worst possible way. The bite mark on his tiny leg, the broken ribs, the forced bottle injury to his mouth. These details expose not just violence, but cruelty, deliberate cruelty inflicted on a helpless child. And it forces us to ask, how many other children suffer in silence? How many are hidden behind closed doors, their stories untold until it's too late? Damien Russell's life was cut short before it even had the chance to begin. He never got to play, to grow, to dream, and all because of the one person who should have loved him unconditionally. So I ask you, what kind of justice is enough for crimes like these? Should killers like Hardcastle ever be given a chance at parole? Or should life mean life? Tell us what you think in the comments below, because cases like this should never be forgotten, and little Damien's story deserves to be told.